Hello and welcome to a special 4-part edition of Man Enough with our good friends at Healthline called No More Silence, Destigmatizing Men's Physical and Mental Health. I'm Justin Baldoni.
I'm Liz Plank.
I'm Jamie Heath.
I'm Yolo Akili.
And something I think we got to get into, as uncomfortable as it is what happens when we age.
Oh, okay. We know where this is going to
And,
go.
and
I'm gonna wrap up right now because I know you're gonna come at me.
luckily, we have a resident expert in aging.
Wow.
Okay, you see this? And I accept it.
Mr. Jamie Heath,
Thank you very much.
one of my best friends in the world.
Yes, indeed.
Could be my father. But you look amazing. You look so good.
This is called
You look so good in that tight black T-shirt.
What's your question, man? We're talking about health, right? You want to talk about like age, how I'm feeling as I'm getting older?
I'm just curious because we know that as men get older,
Yes.
the statistics show that even though we have physical ailments, we don't go to the doctor as much as women. Do you go to the doctor when you have physical stuff going on?
So
Or do
this
you-
is interesting. So I'm raised in a world where I could never show weakness.
Yeah.
All of us are. We are never, barely and rarely seen. So if you finally see me, I can't show you any weakness.
Right.
And health is oftentimes seen as a weakness. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, mental stuff. So I got a mother who's bipolar. I've seen her. She does this amazing thing, by the way, that I learned earlier that I think is worth sharing now for anyone who's listening. When you see someone with a broken ankle, we always say, oh my God, let's slow down for them. We go get them water.
Yeah.
We come and bring them things. We recognize that something's wrong. But mental health is something else. She would say, you can't see my broken brain. You don't see that I have crutches on in here. So it just frustrates you. And when I think about that, wow, like mental health, how many people are dealing with some sort of issue in that regard and are dismissed. So I have that stigma myself as well because I saw my mom and I didn't see the crutches. So when I started going through my own life and messing up and needing help, I was never going to admit to anybody. Number one, I'm a man. I can't admit I'm weak. I was doing some destruction in my life. Couldn't admit it. Needed help. I was sexually abused growing up many times. Could not admit that to anybody, barely myself.
Yeah.
So where do you find a safe space? How do I deal with that? Where does a man go? Who do I tell that when I was a kid, I was dealing with stuff that I was humiliated about, had shame about? Who do I tell that to? There was no one to talk to. Even if you think you're put together, it could be a 12-step program of learning how to sew some clothes together. I don't care. The process of 12-step, the process of the accountability, looking at yourself, admitting to another person that I have some broken parts without anybody judging me is really healing. But you can't really have healing if you don't have a space where you don't have to apologize for where you're at. I'm feeling this. And someone says, I feel you. I hear you.
So, Yolo, I got a question for you. You've been fairly public about being an abuse survivor. How have you been able to create spaces for your healing?
Yeah. Well, I want to lift up and bring in, and very honestly, in the similar way they talked about 12-step programs, 12-step as a form of peer support, right? Which is really something that, like in mental health and healing spaces, we talk about, and it's the center of our work. Creating the space, like I think about Me Too as a peer support space as well, and other kind of spaces where for you to be seen, validated, not always about working towards solutions, but sometimes just being witnessed, right?
Being witnessed.
And the powerful process of that. And I think for me, similar to like you share this piece, it's been being a part of those groups that have really been helpful for me to be able to come to a place of taking ownership and responsibility for the parts of me that were broken, the parts of the strategies that I learned that were no longer serving me, that I learned to survive, absolving myself, particularly when it came to the times in which I've suffered abuse, of what I was not responsible for. Because I think a big part of what happens for people who are survivors of abuse is you start thinking that you made it happen, right? And I think that that's a big part of my unlearning journey has been like, I am not responsible for this man's behavior, right? I did not no matter what I was wearing, what I was doing when he made a choice, and his choice was about him and not about me. And really holding that line has been because of peer support programs, because of 12-step programs for me, because it's being able to be witnessed. And I think that like there's a piece I just want to lift up too, Jamie, that you shared about, I think about Black folks, why I think that peer support and 12-step is so powerful is that sometimes traditional models of clinical health, when with mental health, for some, particularly for, I would say, Black men of a certain age, right? Like, I definitely have experiences in our community where it's the idea, like, the idea of sitting across from a clinician who may not look like you, right? In this chair, who's like kind of quote unquote judging you as a thought perspective is a lot more intimidating for a lot of folks than it is the idea of sitting in a circle with a group of people who are peers.
That's right.
Who are going to meet you here.
Yeah.
Right. Who aren't right. Like, and so there's something there's something that Western mental health needs to interrogate about, like how that construction in itself is a barrier for some of our folks. Because that's why peer support and 12-step is so powerful. It's like, we get to just be like, me too. I'm here with you. I see you. And that's healing in of itself. You know what I mean? So I just naming those pieces, that's been a big part of my healing journey consistently, learning. And it's really been, being quite honest, like, I've really learned so much from it, like, Tarana Burke, who's a friend, and like the Me Too movement of learning really to embrace, like, that part of my journey. Because unfortunately, despite the prevalence we know of child sexual assault in men's communities and in non-binary and trans communities, not necessarily like it's public in terms of discussions, right? There's a lot of room to kind of move through that shame and guilt around that and that embarrassment, all those different dimensions.
I love that.
As confusing and painful as it is. But look at what we're able to do right now. I mean, just having this conversation can you imagine our fathers? They've never had a conversation like this. Have we had fathers? My dad never had a conversation like this.
But one thing I will say is this: when we show up in our work, we often inspire or move other folks to kind of show up in theirs. And I say this like jokingly, like I remember one day I'm on the phone, and my family are country folks, country Black people, right? So one day I'm on the phone with my dad, deep Georgia and Florida, but mostly Fort Lauderdale, Sylvania, Georgia. So like we're talking about deep Georgia, right? And so I'm on the phone with my dad, and like, he's seen the work that I've done with Beam. And in one moment he's like, you know what? I was listening to you the other day, and I was like, maybe I need to go to therapy. And my mother's like in the background. You can hear like, Lord, it's the end times. You heard your dad that said, like, laughing. But like, all that to say that, like, I haven't spent my time, like, sitting, telling my dad he need to go do this. That's not, because I often felt like that's a judgmental approach. I was like, this is what I'm doing. Hey, check this out.
Yeah.
And
You know what I mean? And then he's like, okay, I don't mess with that. Or maybe that's interesting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, moving from that place, I think, is important.
But how beautiful is that our fathers, those of us that have them, can learn from us. And that's what I've been witnessing happening with my dad. Just as an example, my dad won't go to the doctor. I try. I'm like, Dad, go to the doctor. This is hurting. Go to the doctor. So what that created in me was I'm now going when I might not even need to go. Not in that I'm a hypochondriac or that I'm like Googling my symptoms and things like that. But as an example, I know about colorectal cancer, and I'm watching it take a lot of young men. And I'm like, you know what? I should go get screened. So I call my doctor. I find a specialist, and I'm like, hey, can I get a colorectal exam? He's like, how old are you? I said, 36. He's like, no. I'm like, why? He's like, well, you don't really, we say you don't really need to until this age. I'm like, okay, I don't care. Send me the damn thing. So I paid whatever it was. I got my colorectal cancer early screening test, and boom, great. Now I'm good for 5 years. I'll go get in 5 years. I want to go get my prostate checked. Why are we waiting until we're broken to get fixed? What about preventative medicine as well? I think that there's something good about getting physicals and getting checkups and blood work done. And there's nothing unmasculine about it.
Yeah. And there's not enough access to that in this country, particularly, compared to other industrialized countries. It's actually very difficult, right?
So hard.
And this access also comes with a lot of consequences, because a lot of the diseases, if you don't catch them early, they can be more lethal. So there's this pretty atrocious data that shows that men are more likely to die from melanoma, 50% more likely to die from melanoma, and that all comes back to access.
Oh. Wow.
And we know that when we make healthcare more accessible, men, and particularly marginalized men, go to the doctor more.
And
right?
they live longer when they do.
And I really want to, like, two pieces. So one, talking about as Black men in this country, like why Black men wouldn't go to the doctor, right? Because every time so many Black men have engaged the medical industrial complex, it's been disrespectful, it's been denied, it's been ignored, it's been
Exploitative.
ignored, it's been exploited. But I think there's this real big fear because so many black men, so many masculine folks know that there's so much is holding back, right? And so I think that like when we talk about like why is racism sometimes? Why is transphobia for black trans men like, oh my God, no, why would I want to go to a doctor? Why is homophobia? If I go to the doctor's going to ask me certain questions and look at me a certain kind of way when I say about the kind of sex I have or whatever I'm doing. And the fault is not on our communities. The fault is on the systems that say they're supposed to be serving us and are not. And so we need to hold accountable, as opposed to saying, oh, why aren't black men or men or Latino men saying, well, why aren't doctors better trained with bedside manner? Why aren't you more educated about these issues? How many times have I gone to the doctor and had to tell them something? They look it up and be like, well, you was right about that thing about vitamin D in black people. I didn't know. I got ordered a different test. I'm like, I should not. I pay you. You know? And that's a reality. We need to hold the systems accountable. Say you need to step up your game. You need to step up and be on par with the conversations you know the culture is having, so that people can feel safe coming to you and getting care with you. And you need to be examining your privilege in all these different dimensions. So whether you're a white doctor, a woman doctor, wherever you are, you know, hey, I need to own this when this person is coming in. You know, and that's where unfortunately the system is not at in many ways.
That's right.
And can you say one more time the line about you're not broken? Just for any men who are watching this who feel like
People.
people, but
Yeah.
anyone who feels like they can't go to the doctor because it would mean they're broken.
Yeah, it's important to know that trauma creates the illusion that we are broken, you know? And as we heal, we come to the reality that we've always been whole. We may have had to learn some new behaviors, some new strategies. We may have made some mistakes, but we are still whole. We are still worthy. You know, it's just that trauma creates that illusion and that distortion of our worthiness.
We are enough.
I'll say.
We are enough.
Oh,
We are enough.
thank you so much. What a conversation. So many layers, so much complexity. For more men's health information and resources, you can find us. Where can they find us, Liz?
At We Are Man Enough on Instagram or Healthline on Instagram.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for starting this out too with the fact that I'm the oldest person here. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Listen, I just tell the truth.
The wisest. Maybe the wisest.
Exactly.
Definitely not the wisest,
Not the
but for
wisest.
sure the
It's
oldest.
The
I
most
get that.
experience.
All right. This is Man.